Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast. My name is Alana Morris, and I'm here with Brandon Bigsby, and we're here to talk about Vanderbilt women's basketball today and answer some of your guys' questions. So let's jump into that one. First question, right off the bat, returning players that are expected to make a leap and maybe a new player that's going to make a big impact. I just want to get your thoughts on that first because there's a lot of new pieces that could play some big roles for this team.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many people, Atlanta, that you could really pick from this, but I'm going to go with the international star, Aga Makura. I feel like we saw some of that development with her last season, but it feels like her game over summer playing in the international tournament with Poland, you could just see that she has so much potential in so many different ways that she can score. She can use her size. She was really good on the defensive end as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw her maybe take that leap and maybe go into that next step in her development. Now, obviously, that's going to be not difficult to come by, but there is a lot of competition there, obviously, with Justine Passat and her playing very similar roles in very similar positions. But I think that she's someone that we've continuously seen grow from, and someone I think Shea Ralph and the staff really believe in as well.
I can definitely see that. She was putting the ball on the floor very well, knocking down her three-pointers from pretty deep, pretty confidently as well. So Aga is definitely someone who can make that step. She's just a freshman last year, so very inexperienced, and she's definitely coming into her sophomore year with a lot of experience under her belt. I'm just going to go with a different answer. Another freshman from last year is Camille Pierre. She won Freshman of the Week, I believe, 5 times, was part of that all-freshman team. And that's just a player who's got a lot of skill, and she's very raw. She hasn't played basketball for a very long time at all. That coaching staff likes to sing her praises, talks about how athletic she is. And so I just think that now that she has the experience of playing at that level, that Camille Pierre is going to take a big step as well.
Yeah, and I love the fact that we both chose players that were freshmen last year that are going into their sophomore year. Typically, when you do see the most growth, it is between that freshman to sophomore jump and that sophomore to junior jump. So I feel like both of them can come in, and obviously they both looked good last year. I think they could even elevate that to an even higher level this year as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And there was a second part to that. 4 newcomers to the team, 2 freshmen, 2 transfers. Who comes to mind for you to make an immediate impact?
This might be the cop-out answer, Elena, but I've got to go with Michaela Blakes. I mean, just the amount of skill that she possesses, the different ways that she can score and put the ball on the floor is just something that Vanderbilt has not seen from an incoming freshman in such a long time. A McDonald's All-American, 5-star recruit, one of the top 10 freshmen probably in the nation coming into this year. Personally, I think she's somebody that could definitely come in and start opening day against Lipscomb and really look at home. It's just the way that she is able to move the ball, score. She's just really a jack of all trades, I feel like, on the offensive end, and can do some things on the defensive end as well. So obviously she's going to be a freshman. She's going to take her bumps. It's going to take her some time to adjust to that college game, especially when it does get to SEC play. But I think that she's someone that could very well end up being freshman of the year come March.
I agree with you. I mean, she's got just about every accolade that you could want coming out of high school. And so I'll switch up my answer a little bit. I'm going to go with the transfer, Leilani Kapanis. Over 200 recorded steals over 3 years at Penn State. Tremendous defender. And that's just going to take off some of the pressure that Jordan Cambridge was there for. I mean, now that she's gone, I think they were curious where that defensive intensity was going to come from, and they just stole Leilani Kapanis right out of the portal from a lot of teams. I know a lot of SEC schools were reaching out to her, went on some visits with some other teams in the conference, but she ended up at Vanderbilt, and just the defensive intensity she brings. She plays very physical. She kind of has her hand on you at all times, and she makes you just hate playing against her for all 40 minutes that she's on the floor. And so I just think that her defensive presence is going to be huge for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned Jordan Cambridge. That is the reason that her addition this year is such a massive thing. You have to remember, Jordan Cambridge was one of the best defenders in the country in her career. All-time steals leader for Vanderbilt, someone that could come in, really almost take a guard out of the game when she was really locked in. And I mean, she would do it whether it was someone that was a top 10 scorer or a top 10 playmaker. It didn't matter who she was up against. Having Leilani Kapanis be able to come in and kind of take in some of that role, some of that responsibility, someone that was, in my opinion, one of the more underrated players in the Big Ten with Penn State last year. Massive addition. And it's interesting because her and Michaela Blakes, in terms of the lineup, not sure how much are going to be on the floor together, but 2 very different flavors. A very experienced defensive guard, a very young, offensively talented guard that has a little bit of defense as well.
Yeah, I think that starting 5 is going to change a lot, especially at the beginning of the year. They're trying to get a feel for what they like on the floor, so who knows how much we'll see those 2 play together or if not, but they definitely have a lot of options to choose from. And kind of moving on to the next part with the lineup is the post presence. That's a huge question mark. I think that, obviously Sasha Washington coming back has the experience, a little bit undersized, and that's not anything that we didn't already know. Ayanna Mitchell was a freshman last year. She has the size, but was pretty inexperienced, and they have a new freshman in Trinity Wilson. What do you expect it to look like with the post presence for Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I personally think that you'll probably see a lot of Sasha Washington again. I think that Shea Ralph and that staff really do love what they've seen from her, really kind of taking control of that number 5 spot. I think that you could potentially see a little bit more Ayanna Mitchell compared to last year, just depending on the growth that we've seen from her over the summer. Obviously, we will get more of a better idea now as practices start to ramp up here in September, but I feel like a lot of it in terms of that post presence, you'll see a lot of 4-out ball of Sasha Washington, I really think, dominating that 5 spot for the most part, and that hasn't been a problem really for Vanderbilt. I mean, you look at last year, they kind of played with a similar style, and you saw a lot of the guards were able to pick up the rebounding pretty well. Camille Pierre was one of their leading rebounders, Jordan Cambridge one of their leading rebounders, so even though it might not be that typical 2-forward spot where you have 2 bigs manning it down low, you still have one really reliable person down there that can command the paint in Sasha Washington, and then you have your guards that can come in and kind of help clean some of that up as well.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and I think the difference between this year and last year is the depth. And Ayanna Mitchell, that's someone we're just going to have to pay attention to. We don't know the strides that she's made or hasn't made this summer. And then Trinity Wilson, the freshman, that seems kind of like a project for now. They see the potential in her, 1,000-point scorer, over 1,000 rebounds in high school. She's clearly capable of rebounding the ball. But when you're coming into the SEC as a freshman, it's going to be difficult, and you've got a couple people ahead of you. So long term, I think that Wilson, it's just going to take her a little bit to see the floor. But I think with Washington, I can imagine almost, I don't know how they're going to approach it, but if they took a different approach to using her last year, I think that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they've got a lot more depth at the guard position. Leilani Kapnis, too, is a great rebounder. Averaged 7 rebounds a game at Penn State, so that's also going to help as well. But if we even saw almost like a 4-out, 1-in, and they really stretched the floor, because Washington's a little bit quicker for a post because she's a little bit smaller, and so if they can utilize the depth they have at the guard position, and even the forward with Justine Passad, Jordan Oliver, I think Jane Nwaba is going to bring some big minutes off the bench. Yeah. She's somebody that I've seen practice a couple times, and she's incredible at finishing around the rim. So if they can attack the rim and kind of spread the floor, I think that, you won't have to worry about the lack of size inside. And so, while Washington was a focal point at center and they're going to keep giving her the ball, I think that the depth is going to help spread out the floor, and you don't have to rely on her rebounding as much.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that could be one of the more improved aspects of this team from last year. And I know it's kind of interesting saying that because so many pieces from last year's team coming back, and you lose Jordan Cambridge, who was one of the star players of this program for so long. But you mentioned it, Leilani Kapnis averaged over 7 rebounds per game in a really good Big Ten conference. Jordan Cambridge averaged just a hair under 6, so that's even a little bit more. You have Jane Nwaba, who, as you mentioned, I also think is a very underrated pickup for this Vanderbilt team. I think she's someone that can come in off the bench and really give them a lot of good minutes, can do some good things defensively, can help out a little bit with the rebounding as well. And you mentioned the size of Sasha Washington. I feel like for some, that's a little bit of a concern at that 5 spot because Vanderbilt typically going to be a little bit smaller in terms of that forward position than some other teams in terms of the paint. But you have to remember that quickness can be an advantage. If you can position yourself for those rebounds and know where the ball is going and where you need to be positioned, size is not the only thing that matters in terms of that. You can out-position a bigger player to get yourself in a good position to get that rebound. So size, not everything in that case, and I think that that's something that with Vanderbilt, with their versatility, with their athleticism, with a little bit more of that 4-out, 1-in look, could give them a little bit of an advantage as well, with Sasha Washington also being a very experienced player playing in that role.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's just all about how they want to approach it, and with the depth, we're going to see probably things we didn't see last year. So I'm curious to see how they plan on playing, especially through the first couple of games, with it going to be changing up a lot. But talking about the depth on this roster, who do you see as the starter? Maybe the first couple off the bench, and about how many wins are you expecting out of this team this year?
Gosh, I feel like this can really change game to game, right? I mean, we talked about, and this is probably the one position that I feel like maybe swap around the most, especially early in the season, is that under guard spot between Michaela Blakes and Leilani Kapanis. I feel like you could argue for having Kapanis in that starting five because she's that experienced guard that provides so much on both ends of the floor. She's really kind of a jack of all trades and a perfect two-way player for this team, but at the same time, Michaela Blakes, so much talent that's there, 5-star recruit. She can come in and pretty much make an impact immediately. I feel like those are the two to where you're going to see pretty much the same lineup that we saw down the stretch last year, but that guard spot's going to be a lot different between those two. And if I'm personally giving the edge to someone, I'm probably going with Blake's personally. I like the idea of having somebody coming off the bench, not necessarily as a bench player, but almost as like a pseudo starter that can still give you 20 plus minutes a game and kind of let some of the load off of Michaela Blakes a little bit, as well as Jordan Oliver and others as well. So I feel like there's a lot of option there, but if I had to pick a six to come off the bench and almost be kind of a pseudo starter, I'm going to go Leilani Kapanis.
All right, so you've got Blake's. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but who are your five?
Oh gosh, this is tough. Blake's, Moore, Oliver, Passat, Washington.
And I was going to go with the same. I think that I was going to make sure that Jordan Oliver was in there, honestly, because she's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. I mean, she can do about everything you ask her to do. And it's crazy to me that we haven't even considered Justine Passat. That's just how much depth that they have. Yeah. And so, obviously, opening day, it's going to be interesting to see who they have because I could probably guess that it's not going to be the same the next game. And so I like the five that you have. I just wanted to make sure Jordan Oliver was included in that because of everything that she can do. But I think that, Leilani Kapanis is interchangeable. We've seen Justine Passat start, but having Pierre in there is definitely important because, we saw what she could do down the stretch. But I agree with you there that the depth is going to be big, and I don't want to forget about Nawaba either. I just think that she's very underrated coming out of a smaller school who didn't have as much success. I just think that people are not realizing quite yet how valuable she could be to this team. I think Nawaba plays a little bit similar to Oliver, but maybe can finish around the basket a little bit better. So that's someone I'm also very just kind of intrigued to see how they use her. So a lot of pieces could come off the bench first. It honestly just depends on what they need. I don't want to go with a record for the year because we don't know how many games they're going to end up playing, but what's that win mark you think they need to hit?
I think it's got to be 20 again. Considering where this team is at, the experience that they got last year, I feel like every year with Shea Ralph, we have seen this team and this program progress. And I know the schedule this year in terms of the non-conference much tougher than what they had last year. So I'm not going to be disappointed if they don't hit that 20 win mark, but I do think you have to be somewhere between that 18 to 20 win mark because you're looking for that progression. You're looking for that team to make that next step, especially with so many players from last year's roster that made such an impact returning this year and also adding in more talent, adding in a Michaela Blakes, Leilani Kapanis, a Jane Nawaba. So I think the 20 wins probably is that ideal mark that you would like to see Vanderbilt hit. If they're a little bit under that, I don't think you can fault them too much with how tough the SEC is and with how much tougher the non-conference is as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that 20 win mark should honestly secure you a spot in the NCAA tournament. Their schedule is tougher, and you can't forget about the fact that Oklahoma and Texas are now in the SEC, and Vanderbilt plays them both on the road. So if you hit that 18 to 19 mark, you're not out of the tournament because you played a tougher schedule. But I think you got to hit that 18, 19, and anything better is just, it's great. I mean, it just helps maybe get you a higher seed or give you some more security in getting in or not, because last year they were on that bubble because of the little bit of a weaker non-conference. And I think that, with the new quad system in place, they were taking that into mind. And I think that they structured their non-conference schedule better and, just to allow them to give them a chance at the end of the year when they're trying to fight for a spot to get in the NCAA tournament. And so that kind of takes me to the next question with the schedule. Is there a non-conference game that you have circled that you're like, this is an important game for them?
Yeah, and I feel like there's a couple of different directions you can go in, and I'm not going to pick two answers, but I will give a hint that these two teams from the same state. I think the one game that could really swing Vanderbilt one way or the other is that game at Coral Gables in Miami. I feel like that is going to be such an intriguing game because of the talent that Miami has coming in, new coach, still a really good team that, remember, made the Elite Eight just 2 years ago. So Miami is a really high-end program. That SEC, ACC challenge, always so intriguing. Vanderbilt nearly beat NC State at NC State last year as well. So it's not like they're afraid to go on the road and face a really tough team from the ACC. I feel like that's a game that when you're looking at March, and you mentioned something, Elena, that's so true, that new quad system this year, that would be a quad one win for Vanderbilt. That could be absolutely massive for their resume come March, when last year they were kind of sweating things because they didn't have a lot of those quad one opportunities in that first stretch during non-conference. That could be a game that pushes them over the edge. Maybe not even in terms of are they in or are they out, but also in terms of seeding as well. That could be maybe the difference between being a 9 seed and being a 7.
And that game he's referencing, I kind of wanted to bring that up along with another one, is the USF game. They play them very quickly into the year. I want to say it's their third game, and it's on the road. They picked up Mama Dembele from Missouri, who's a very experienced player. That's a team that likes to play big schools and is very competitive. So that's just an important road test that you don't want to look over just because they're not a big name. But what comes to my mind is the tournament over Thanksgiving break. Arizona, that's the team for me. That is that comes right before the Miami game. And I think that you can kind of see what it's like to play against a Power 5 opponent, or Power 4 now, I guess, opponent. Coach Barnes at Arizona State's done a great job with that program, and so that's a tough school now in the Big 12 that they're going to be playing against. And so, that tournament also consists of Cal and Michigan State. We're not sure which one they're going to see yet, depending on who wins and who loses. Obviously, that next game will be important, but I think that first game against your Power 4 opponent, against a good Arizona team, that's the one I'm really looking forward to the most, because it'll kind of let you see how they match up and how they play against that kind of talent.
Yeah, and I think that Arizona one, that is a really good other choice, because we talked about how Miami's a team that just made the Elite Eight a couple of years ago. Don't forget, Arizona made the national championship just a few years ago and only lost by 1 point. So you're talking about a team and a program that has a lot of history and really does have talent that's come in over the last few years. And you mentioned Coach Barnes, what she's done with that program as well. That's going to be a really intriguing matchup against a program that has been consistently one of the better ones in the country, obviously now being a Big 12 school rather than a Pac-12 school, but a team like Vanderbilt that has been on the rise and has this upward trajectory. I think those are the games that you circle on the calendar for different reasons, because you're like, okay, our program is at the level with those other schools. So I agree with you as well. I think Arizona also a really good choice, especially since that's a neutral site game as well, rather than being at Memorial Gym or having to go all the way to Tucson.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Seems like a lot of buzz going around the program on the West End. Shea Ralph heading into year 4, and with her, just taking control of this team, it's just only gotten better for them, and so I think people are excited to see what they can do. They were a team picked to finish last in the SEC last year, and they well exceeded those expectations, making the NCAA tournament for the first time in 10 years, and so just the buzz around them and what Shea Ralph's been able to do, people are really looking forward to seeing the Commodores open up on November 4th with Lipscomb. And, I'm sure we're going to be enjoying that one. A little bit of worlds colliding there. But, Joey, our producer back there today, you have any more questions for people looking forward to basketball season?
Yeah, I was going to ask, what do we think Camille Pierre's stat line ends up being, or the range of it? Feels like she can take a real leap.
Yeah, I honestly think that her rebounding's going to go up. I think that, honestly expecting around 7 or 8 rebounds is reasonable for how much of a stride she took from last year. And I think she'll hit that double-digit mark with points. I think around 10 or 11. But I think that she's got the ability to explode in games and just go off. But I think that averaging, honestly, close to a double-double wouldn't be shocking for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, we kind of talked about just the versatility throughout the lineup. Camille Pierre, she's one of those players that you really feel like can step up depending on the game. And she's someone that contributed massively to their rebounding last year. I think that there's going to be room for that to grow a little bit more. And she's just one of those players where it feels like on a national level or in a conference level, she doesn't always get that attention necessarily that she deserves, but she is a massive impact for this Vanderbilt team. She does a lot of the things that don't necessarily even go on the stat sheet. Obviously, the points and the rebounds, that's great, but just the way she's always in position, she's great defensively. And again, someone that can help out Sasha Washington on those rebounds as well, considering the size. Maybe one of the things that people are concerned about with Vanderbilt coming into the season. So I definitely agree. I think she takes a leap. I don't know if she'll get towards that double-double, but She could very well do it. I think she could probably be around a 9-8 player, 10-8 player at least. So it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like for her this year, especially with so many other players that can contribute in those aspects as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, but I just think that she's going to be a huge piece, especially helping out Sasha Washington down low. Very physical player, very athletic. Only started playing basketball in the 8th grade. Ended up winning Arizona State Player of the Year. I'm not sure if you all have seen this video on Twitter, but she can dunk a basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, she's incredibly athletic, and so that's someone who, and that's why in my opinion, I think she's gonna take the biggest stride of anybody. And of course, Aga, as you mentioned, is somebody to look out for as well. We thank you to our producer Joey back there for another question. And appreciate you guys listening in. We're looking forward to basketball here. I know Brandon, me, Joey, I mean, we're all very excited for basketball over at Vanderbilt this year. Memorial should be a great place to be. Less than 2 months away from the season. We look forward to just continuing to provide you guys with coverage. And for now, for Brandon Bigsby and myself, thank you guys for listening.